Yo, it's your boy Logos, and today I want to react to a Thomas Sowell video where he discusses the root causes of the problems in Britain and United States. I would say it's culture and consumerism. When you have a culture where you do anything, whether it's detrimental to yourself, your family, or your future family, for money and fame, of course you're going to have a society and a group of people that are pretty messed up. We have social media and celebrity being worshipped, when you have people doing anything for clout, when you have people more willing to record a fight or something tragic happening, they're willing to step in and stop it, you're screwed up. It could be a lot of different things. Society has always been having problems. It's not like we ever had a perfect society or utopia, but at least what I see in this day and age, and I'm part of this newer generation too, to be honest, I think it's a culture. I think it's social media. I think it's our values and our priorities. We can't say we value one thing but prioritize someone else or something else. And I'm not saying that somebody on the pedestal. I'm not perfect. I need to improve. I need to work on things. But when I look at society and the culture overall, we could improve. That's just the way it is. And if each individual, including myself, would see that, say that, and so I acted on it, at least a percentage each day, you don't have to do 50%, but 1% or a tenth of a percent, and just add on that each and every single day, we'll all be better off. But I don't know, I'm not some guru, that's just how I see it. So I'm curious to see what Thomas Sowell got to say. Let's get into it.
Economic progress, I'm quoting you. Despite the grand myth that black economic progress began or accelerated with the passage of the civil rights laws and the war on poverty programs of the 1960s, the fact is that the poverty rate among blacks fell from 87% in 1940 to 47% in 1960. But over the next 20 years, the poverty rate among blacks fell another 18 percentage points. This was just the continuation of a previous economic trend, but at a slower rate of progress. It was not some grand deliverance, close quote. That is so counter to what we are taught in school, what appears on the editorial pages of newspapers, that I feel as though I want to ask you, you really want to stick with that assertion?
I have more evidence in my most recent book, Discrimination and Disparities. I point out that this really is a pattern not peculiar to blacks or even to the United States, that you can see the same thing in England, you can see it in any number of other countries, that the poor were much worse off economically, let's say in the first half of the 20th century, and yet in terms of their own behavior, they were far more decent societies, and afterwards, after this welfare state that's supposed to make them better off and better human beings, that's when the crime rate skyrocketed on both sides of the Atlantic. The British were famous for being perhaps the most polite, considerate society in the world prior to that. After that, you get things like the 2011 riots over there, went through London, Manchester, where they're going through this. They anticipated Ferguson and Baltimore by a few years. And the same thing is the burning down of buildings, the throwing of gasoline bombs, the whole smear. And none of those people were descendants of slaves.
So the poor people were doing, if the lesson of the 20th century is something like poor people, including in this country African Americans, were improving their lot and leading fundamentally decent lives until the government decided to help them.
Yeah, yes.
That's a fair statement.
Well, they're better off economically because of what's been given.
Right.
But of course, when you have the crime rate, I mean, I got the first inkling of this some years back when I was at some school in Harlem doing some research, and I had looked out the window and I mentioned in passing that when I was a little kid, I used to walk my dog in that park, and looks of horror came over the students' faces. Nobody in his right mind would have a child go into that park, walking a dog or not. The principal was warning these students not to cross this park, which was about a block and a half wide, even in groups of 6. And when I tell them about how in his hot summer nights I would sleep out on the fire escapes in Harlem, They looked at me like I was a man from Mars. People were doing that all over New York. They were doing it in Philadelphia, Washington, wherever I've known people. That was a common thing for poor people. We didn't have the money for air conditioning.
Right.
You slept out on the fire escape or in the parks. Where Walter grew up
Walter Williams.
Walter Williams grew up in a housing project in Philadelphia. He was saying on the hot summer nights, the people would be in this project would have little balconies. They'd sleep out on the balconies, and the ones on the first floor who didn't have balconies would sleep out in the yard. And that there were old men who you could see sit on a hot summer night, sitting outdoors into the wee hours playing cards or checkers or whatever. It was a different world.
It was a safe world.
And it was infinitely safer.
Now, what about family structure, Tom? Again, I'm quoting you. Most black children were being raised in two-parent families in 1960. 30 years after the liberal welfare state, the great majority of black children were being raised by single parents.
Yes.
How does that? By the way, we should note that Patrick Moynihan publishes the Moynihan Report in 1965.
Yes.
And he's alarmed because the illegitimacy rate among black families is 25% then. Now, among whites, it's over a third.
Yes.
Hispanics, it's over half. And among African Americans, it's over 70%. What's going on there?
Well, this is, again, this too, you find the same thing in Britain, you find it in France, in Norway, you find it in the Western world. In fact,
The dissolution of the family structure.
Oh, yeah, there are any number of Western nations where 40% of the children are raised with only one parent.
Right.
At the extremes, compared to Asian countries, at the extremes, Iceland, it's 2 out of 3 children born are raised in a single-parent home. In South Korea, it's 1 out of 66.
Wow. Wow.
And that's something that you can't blame on slavery, white people. You can't blame anybody for that except ourselves. We're not talking about that. I'm talking about within the black community. I was watching this show with my girlfriend called Power, but it's like a spin-off of the original show. So this show is about a young black kid who goes to college, and he's like, he's just a straight up gangster, thug for no damn good reason. Like, he grew up in a good influential family, all this other stuff. But within his college classes, they have these little debates about privilege, you know, all the woke propaganda they put on today. In one episode, they use people having like parents in two-parent households as some type of like special privilege that the person, that's what I understand about this whole privilege thing, as if people should be feeling bad for growing up in a two-parent household, or they should be feeling bad because they grew up in a wealthy family. I'm not going to be mad at an individual because of the fact that they didn't even choose to be born to parents who decide to make good decisions and have good finances. That's not their fault. They shouldn't be blamed for that. I'm not going to dismiss what their father or their parents did, just saying they don't got it because they're white. Because there are plenty of white people throughout this whole country that are very fucking poor. Appalachian area, that is known for being like a very poor and impoverished place. I don't see those people using any white privilege. They wish they could have some white privilege to spend, to get some food, free energy, free rent. Everybody is suffering. Everybody, every group of people has some type of hardship because life has hardship for everybody. That's the majority of people. Not everybody is rich.
And so, that's the welfare state?
Yes,
it is.
Oh, you're paying. You're creating a situation where if the first of all, you're creating a situation where if the man stays there, the government will not give the woman welfare, and if he leaves, it will. And so they're paying. When you pay people not to get married, more people don't get married.
Right. Okay. So what would have happened if Lyndon Johnson, instead of becoming a liberal, had remained a crusty, tough, skeptical Texas conservative,
yes,
which is certainly the way he started his career. If Lyndon Johnson had embraced the constrained vision, instead of instituting the war on poverty and the Great Society and so forth, what would the country look like today?
A lot better. You would not have the same rates for crime and so on. Because, you see, you can't have a welfare state in a democratic country unless you first have a welfare state vision. And when you buy all the assumptions of that vision, then you're buying a lot of trouble. One of the episodes I think epitomized it was in France in this case. That there were knife attacks by various people from North Africa against Chinese people in some suburb of Paris. And one of the things that the attackers said, that why are you attacking the Chinese? And it wasn't because of anything the Chinese had done to them. He said, they have nice clothes and big cars. That's not fair. I mean, that's, egalitarianism as a philosophy is one thing, but the actual consequences of it mean things like resenting other people's good fortune.
Right.
What you said is absolutely true. And you see that a lot nowadays. A lot of people who are, I won't say leaning towards extreme left, socialist, communist ideology, they talk about stuff like eating the rich. They talk about guillotining the rich. They talk about doing a whole bunch of messed up, violent acts to people they don't even know, simply because of the fact that they don't got money. And some of these same people might put on a mask, doing some black, and call themselves Antifa. And then they'll go and march down the street, waving flags covered in red with a hammer and sickle. I shit you not. Like, everything I just described was either in that crazy woke liberal video I did like a few months back, or I've seen over the years watching different independent media companies recording these riots, recording these quote unquote peaceful protests. It's peaceful until people start breaking down homes, breaking up businesses, throwing rocks, fighting with the police, throwing fire bombs, intimidating people. These people somehow, somewhere think having a utopian, socialist, Marxist, I don't know, country will fix all of their problems. We saw what happened in Chas in Portland, Oregon, I think, when they tried to do that, when they kicked out the police, kicked out any type of formal government, and they said the citizens going to govern themselves. And that was nothing more than woven blocks or bands of people getting together, beating up people who was quote unquote doing crimes. And there was even people who were dying within this zone called Chas that EMS from the actual government couldn't even get to because of these pieces of shit. Because of these pieces of shit socialists, Marxists, who did nothing more, have nothing good to gain out of society. So the only thing they can imagine is fucking it all up so they can somehow, some way get power, through their own stupidity? Because most of them can't even fight. Most of them never even be in the fight, but they love getting people faces, trying to intimidate them using weapons. And they claim they want to fight against Nazis, but I don't know if you guys heard about, I think Andy Ingo or something like that. He was a reporter who got jumped and beat up by Antifa. He was like a Chinese man, and they beat him up terribly. Like, they really fucked him up. But these same people want to start typing about stop Asian hate and all those other nonsense, calling Trump the new Hitler and saying what he said about Asian people or this group of people, all these other different group of people are racist or Islamophobic, or I don't know like the Asian word for like phobic, like Islamophobic or whatever. But either way, xenophobia or any of this other stuff. My point is, these same people have no common sense. They attack, hurt, and give value to anybody that doesn't agree with them. It doesn't matter about your skin color. It doesn't matter about your quote unquote gender or your ideology. That's the only thing that does actually count, actually. Your ideology. Agree with me, or if you don't, shut the fuck up, or I'm gonna make you shut the hell up. That's how these people think. It's very stupid and childish, and I'm hoping they can actually, grow up and rise up like many people do when they're younger and they get older and get more life experience. But my fear is these people gonna destroy the country or mess up the country in such a way that by the time they even can rise up or get some actual life experience, we're gonna be screwed. We're gonna be at a point we can't return from, and that's my worry. But that's just how I see it. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Like, share, and subscribe. It's your boy Logos, and I'll see you next time. Peace.